So Katie Simpson is in Atlanta, Georgia tonight, where she's been for quite some time. Wow, loud there. All right, Katie, walk us through where you are right now and what's happening. Oh, poor Katie. Can't quite hear her. All right, hang on a second.
Can't quite hear us, but as you...
There you go.
Can you hear me now, Adrian?
We've got you.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So take a look. We found the party. You'll be shocked to learn that I found the party. This is in Atlanta, and people here are incredibly excited about the victory of Joe Biden. Now, this is a very different scene than what we saw earlier today outside the Capitol, where there were protests, pro-Trump supporters, the protests. But I'm going to bring in a couple of Joe Biden supporters. Lee and Kelly, tell me a little bit about your reaction to today's results.
Very, very relieved and excited for a fresh start.
How about yourself? Can I get your reaction?
I'm ecstatic. Trump the con man is gone. He's out. He's out of there. He won't be able to kill any more Americans. Woohoo!
So I assume that's a reference to COVID and your concern about his handling of the pandemic.
Yeah, he did a lousy job. Hundreds of thousands of Americans died because of him. He didn't set an example. He didn't wear a mask. He talked out of both sides of his mouth. He didn't give healthcare workers PPE. He's gone. We're kicking him out.
What do you make of how Georgia played a role in this election?
It's actually very surprising, but a nice surprise. Atlanta's demographic has changed over the last several years, and it's refreshing to see a new perspective coming in. Georgia has always been a very red Republican state, and it's wonderful to see a change.
Did you anticipate the change would look like this? Were you expecting this?
You know, they said in the polls it was close, but to be honest with you, I didn't, because it's always been so conservative. But boy, you know, so happy it's turned blue. Thank you so much, Stacey Abrams. Way to go. We did it. We're blue.
Tell me a little bit about the role Stacey Abrams has played in this.
She has been magnificent in so many levels. She has literally changed the power of the vote and encouraging people to get out to vote. Thank you, Stacey Abrams. Good job.
So what do you want to see the first thing the vice president-elect deal with once he is in position?
Yeah, he needs to work on COVID. I hear he's bringing together a task force. He needs to get Fauci on there. And essentially, we need a mask mandate, and we need to get this under control so that everybody can go back to work, everybody can socialize again, and have their lives back.
Now, one last question I want to ask you a little bit about. We were at the Capitol building earlier today, and there were a number of demonstrators there claiming that, the vote was illegal and they don't believe the results. What needs to happen in this state, in your community, for there to be some sort of healing or unity here?
It's just a matter of time. There's always people who are upset about the election results and someone who's going to complain. I think that everything has been above board and solid 100%. It'll just take a little time for people to heal and come together again, and I think Joe Biden can do it.
Is healing possible here? The state is very divided.
Well, a guy like Joe Biden, yeah, he's all about crossing across lines, bringing everybody together. He's going to be a president for the United States, not just blue states. He'll be for red and blue states. All this division stuff, it's gone. That was a Donald Trump, horrible thing. He was a con man. He conned a lot of people. He didn't con us. We're good.
Not that anyone wants to think of 2024, but what do you predict? Where does the Republican Party go? Clearly you guys are here supporting Democrats, but where does the Republican Party go? Are you concerned that Donald Trump and, this brand of politics is here to stay?
No, I think that was an anomaly. I think he was a one and done. We can't have another Donald Trump ever.
All right, thank you very much for your time today, guys.
Thank you, guys.
And so, Adrian, let's do a little walk around here, shall we? Come on
like
in.
that.
So
Good.
We've watched some. There's lots of supporters here for the Joe Biden campaign, and we've actually seen huge groups, hundreds of people sort of march different ways up and down the street. And you can see over here, there are so many people. A lot of people are out here having some celebratory cocktails. That is definitely something that's happening here tonight. But it's a celebratory atmosphere, and I cannot express how different it is from what we saw earlier today. We saw armed supporters of the president, armed supporters or armed protesters against the president standing in front of the State House in here in Atlanta. But here Big celebration, no tensions, everyone is excited. People are calling for unity, people are excited, and it's a street party. Adrian.
Wow, Katie Simpson, the woman who never sleeps and always finds these amazing scenes. Thank you very much for that. You stay safe. It is incredible to see the difference between this afternoon and today. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks.
I love the live looks we're getting in different parts of the United States and the voices we're hearing. Senior correspondent Susan Ormiston is outside the Biden campaign headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. The man set to become the 46th U.S. president will celebrate his win and address the nation, in fact, the world, in about an hour from now at 8 o'clock Eastern. And Susan, curious about the mood there right now.
Well, it's a bit of a tailgate party going on in the parking lot behind me here. You've got cars streaming in pretty steadily. This is a Biden drive-in rally, as we've seen so often during the campaign. They've been invited to come here, park. People are hanging out the tops of their sunroofs. They've got the trunks open of the vans. They've got a few, as Katie would say, celebratory beverages, perhaps. And they are very, very excited. Outside the parking lot here this afternoon, we talked to many people, many from Delaware, who are very proud that Delaware has produced the next president of the United States. One man told me, "Little state, Big Joe," and said he was actually proud of the president. Joe Biden, I think if you'd even asked him 3 years ago if this would be his stage tonight, he would have reckoned no. He's often said that the reason he ran for president was Donald Trump. He came out of retirement, if you will, to run again, his third time seeking the presidency, and tonight he is the president-elect, and he's bringing with him, of course, Kamala Harris, the vice president-elect, the first Black South Asian woman ever to reach that high an office. And I can tell you the people around here, particularly Black women I spoke to this afternoon, are super excited about that. They came because of her. They're celebrating the history-making moment here, and we're going to hear both of them tonight. Ian, first Kamala Harris will speak on the stage here for 5 minutes perhaps, and then the president-elect will come on and probably talk about many of his themes we've heard in the campaign. Primarily, as you've been hearing people tell you tonight from the streets, unity, how to heal a divided nation. It won't be overnight, it won't be easy, it may not be successful, but he's committed to try. Secondly, the coronavirus. We expect soon that he will be coming up with his plan to control the virus and to revive a flagging economy, which desperately needs some input now that he will be the president come January, Ian.
Susan, as you know, in various places around the United States, our reporters have shown us where there have been lines or a street or police to try to separate the pro-Biden and the pro-Trump supporters. What about there? Is it fairly locked down to get ready for the president-elect to show up? Are there any Trump protesters in the distance at all?
There are not that we've seen. Delaware is a fairly calm place, Ian. It is deeply democratic. Many people here know Joe from his time he moved to this area when he was in 4th grade. He's represented Delaware. Interestingly, Ian, 48 years ago tonight, he was elected as the junior senator from Delaware. It's hard to imagine he's survived this long. He will be the oldest president-elect in history. So no, we haven't seen any angry opposition around here. Mind you, we've been pretty much around this area where we've been waiting since Tuesday night for a victory speech of some sort were Biden to win. And so the people around here, they've come every night hoping that tonight's the night. And I've been telling you a few nights, haven't I, that I think tomorrow will be the day. Well, tonight is the night. That we're sure of.
Less than 40 minutes away from hearing from the president-elect, and of course before that the vice president-elect. Susan Ormiston will be coming back to you soon enough. So whether it's Susan or Stephen, David Common, Katie Simpson and their teams, they have been working tirelessly, speaking to voters, especially earlier today as they were reacting to knowing who the next president will be. So we want to play you a little more of what we've been hearing from Americans thrilled about the Joe Biden win.
We're so excited. We're so excited. America's spoke, we won.
Yes.
We won.
Every vote counted.
Biden won!
What an amazing day for the world, for all people in this country. It really, really is truly a special day. I would argue the best day of my life.
Going to sleep with a headache. We woke up when the sun is shining. It's all good now. It's all good.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I've been waiting for this day since 2016.
Exaltedly happy. I'm just tired of the drama. You know, it's like dealing with a 3-year-old on steroids.
Truly democracy at work. You know, our founding fathers would be proud of this.
It means this country has hope, that we're not lost.
I'm excited to see Kamala Harris in the office. It gives women of color, minorities, you know, hope.
America spoke, the people spoke. You got to count every vote, okay? The people spoke. We showed up, we showed out. Woo-hoo! I'm so proud of our people.
One of the best things about ever working in the United States as a journalist is getting to listen to Americans speak, because when they're on a tear, there's no stopping them. Our election special continues on CBC News Network as we wait for the big moment of the night. We are expecting to hear from President-elect Joe Biden when he takes to that podium to address supporters and the nation and the world from Wilmington, Delaware. We will take you there live on CBC News Network, of course. We're back in a moment.
Welcome back to our election special here on CBC News Network. We're moments away from hearing from President-elect Joe Biden, and we want to show you the scene, the podium here, where Biden will address his supporters and the nation. It's his hometown of Wilmington, Delaware. There's the podium.
So one of the biggest celebrations of Donald Trump's defeat came on his own doorstep, just outside the White House in Washington. So Paul Hunter was there in the thick of the crowd, as he so often is, and joins us from our Washington bureau tonight. Paul.
Yeah, you know, I got to say, it's not, I can't say that I didn't expect people to go out, but not in the numbers that we saw today. Just an incredible mass of jubilation, practically knocking on Donald Trump's door. They were just a block away from the White House. It was an extraordinary scene. Jubilation mixed with a sense that now there's work to be done from pretty much everybody I spoke with. We were out there for much of the afternoon. Here's a sampling of who we talked with.
How are you feeling right now?
Wonderful, incredibly thankful for the results of this election. Clearly, it's a day to celebrate, and everyone here knows it. I'm feeling wonderful.
For one thing, I see the United States being the United States again, because we were going in a whole different direction. And now I see Biden just bringing everybody back together, and we're becoming as one all over again. It is just so exciting. I'm so happy.
Let's go, Biden!
The one thing that scares me is that 40% of the people in this population in this country support him. That still scares me. But hopefully that we're going to have a leader who's going to try and bring people together, who's not going to amplify the racism, who's not going to amplify the divisiveness. So maybe if you have a different voice in front, not stoking the fires, we're going to be better off.
Well, today's all hope, but moving forward, I think it's all about figuring out how to become more unified, understanding the other side, and just trying to get over the terribleness.
It's easier said than done, isn't it?
Oh my God, I actually have no idea how we'll do it, but I'm glad that Joe and Kamala are going to be leading it.
And that was pretty much representative of what we heard from every single person we spoke with. You know, one of two things. One, stoked, and two, look, this country's got a lot of problems that were either created or worsened by Donald Trump, and now begins the job of undoing those problems.
And I saw I imagine the expectations of Joe Biden are stratospheric from people like that who are saying, that they're relieved, and then they have a laundry list of things they need to get done. I mean, are people afraid that there's just no way to live up to those expectations?
I put that to people, and their answer was effectively, we don't care, because we do care. They care. They want him to be. But remember, this wasn't necessarily even about him. This was about Donald Trump. This was get him out. We can begin that process. They believe in Joe Biden, don't get me wrong. His whole tone, the whole campaign, fighting for the soul of this country. He began his campaign with that. He ended his campaign with that. He believes that. They believe he believes that. But job one is getting Trump out, and that is the reason behind the jubilation on the streets tonight.
And Paul, if I may, just one last question. This is Joe Biden's night, so I don't want to dwell too much on what Donald Trump is doing, but either he heard that or saw that or heard tell of what was going on outside. Any reaction from him?
People might have told him what was going on the golf course because he went golfing today. He was at the White House for some of today. He got back middle of the afternoon, and the crowd was in full roar at that point, so he's well aware of it. But he has effectively said nothing other than he doesn't accept the results of the election. Still, it's the same language we've heard all week. He put a statement out today, written statement, calling it with all the illegal votes, and his legal team will be challenging the results starting in court tomorrow. We know about the recounts. He referenced those again. But look, there remains, you got to say this every single time, no evidence of any wrongdoing, like none has been put forward. The recounts don't really, historically in this country, they don't change anything. Most legal experts say he is going nowhere with this stuff, but he hasn't accepted the results of the election. He didn't call Joe Biden today. Every president who, once the call is made, the traditional gracious thing to do is to call the winner and say, hey, this was yours. You got it. Congratulations. Donald Trump didn't do that. He has not been gracious. He's shown no signal he will be gracious. Tonight, he's sitting in the White House watching TV, no doubt fuming, and he's going to be president for another 74 days. Who knows what he's going to do?
All right, Paul Hunter. Thanks very much, Paul.
Well, we have reporters right across the country, including David Common in Phoenix, Arizona. And let's check in with him now. And David, we've seen some pretty interesting scenes from you through the day. What's it like in Phoenix tonight?
Well, only getting more interesting, frankly, Ian. It's become very clear that if Donald Trump intends to fight this, and not just in a sense of legal challenges, if he intends to fight this on social media, if he intends to encourage his supporters to fight this, that he will have people backing him. And when I say it's getting more interesting tonight, so what we haven't seen here before is Biden supporters come out. Over on that corner are a group of Biden supporters. They've come out, and just a few moments ago, they were confronted by a number of Trump supporters who went over there. No violence, but lots of yelling going back and forth. You actually see some of them sort of move periodically back and forth. Much larger police presence here tonight after all of this. And indeed, there are, a number of people here, as we've seen throughout the course of this week, who are armed. Entirely legal here, Second Amendment right, and yet there are certainly more people who are out in front of this vote counting center. This is an interesting little scene right here, actually, Ian. These two, I'm just going to point out to our cameraman, this is a Democrat and a Republican, and they've basically been arguing for the last 30 minutes each other and recording it and live streaming it as they go along tonight. Move a little bit further in here, you start to see a lot more guns that are around here. But if I look at kind of what the broader perspective of what is going to happen in the long run is, what does Donald Trump say and do next? What is the thing that he does, and how does this crowd respond? Because they listen to him. They hear and watch all that he has to say. This is not to say that the 60+ million Americans who voted for Donald Trump on Tuesday all are of one unified mind. Some people came because of what they feel is his economic record. Others come because of his Supreme Court record. But what is the thing that the greatest number take at this point now? What do they do? I don't mind telling you, that there are moments that it is quite tense here, and probably today is the most tense that we've seen. Most likely because of the call, the projection that Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States. Very few people here accept that. And they don't accept it because they believe that places like this building in here, where the vote count continues through the course of this weekend in Arizona, they believe fraud has occurred in there. They believe broadly that this election has been stolen. There's a sign over there. It's too far away, so I won't worry about Osama, my cameraman, being able to see it. But it's it's way by that U-Haul truck. So, the idea is that the election is being stolen. That's sort of the broader concern. Numbers kind of ebb and flow here. There were hundreds more people out here earlier. We've seen this man in the antlers or horns behind me at basically every protest over the last several days. Really kind of wondering what happens next. And this is one of those states that remains too close to call, but in the bigger picture, it's that polarization really up close.
Is there a way, David, to discreetly get a live shot of those two people who are arguing, live streaming it? It almost looked like a piece of performance art, but it's not. I don't know if you can ask Osama if we can get that shot.
Oh, we absolutely can walk back there. Yeah, we certainly can. So, this actually began when this man came across the street. He followed someone else, the Trump supporter, and in all of that, the Trump supporter then went to the sheriff's deputies here and asked that this guy right here we're talking about here, the two women and the man in the sunglasses. Yeah, there is a bit of a performance art. It's funny you use that term, Ian, to the extent that, like when we're doing this together, a lot of the time I'm being recorded, and I'm not the only one. I think about my colleagues who are based in the United States who for the better course of a year have been recorded, have been taunted. You look at journalists, particularly from CNN and MSNBC, but not exclusively from them, who are very visible and who are being sort of poked at constantly, followed constantly, bothered constantly, interrupted with constantly. And so there is this idea that, the cameraman Osama is just pointing out to me that this is getting a little bit more tense, so we're just going to walk back over the street. I think part of what's going on is when the cameras are here, of course, Ian, perhaps there's more interest in this. Let me just poke the microphone in here for a couple of seconds and you listen to it.
Why are we on opposite sides? Why don't we celebrate with them
and they can celebrate with us. It doesn't matter. But how long are we going to keep dividing our people? This is what they want. They want us to riot. They want us to war. They want us to hurt each other. But we are one human race. So what are we going to do? Just sit around and hate everybody because they voted Biden? Hate everybody because they voted Trump? You think Biden and Trump give two fucks right now that anyone voted for anyone? They don't care. But you know what, though? But we're people. We got to unite together. Show the government that we are united. That we fight for our people, but not like with violence. We support each other. I don't care if you're black or white. I don't care if you're religious or not. We're one humans under one world. We have nothing but this world. What happens? What good are we?
Fascinating listening to that woman. Frankly, that is not the most vocal thing that we've heard this week. You don't hear that a lot. And I would point out that as we're experiencing these kind of tenser moments here, and there's all these guns out on the street, like a couple of blocks that way, people are sitting on patios having a beer. Over in Tempe, over in Mesa, they're just like having a nice night. It's a cool night here out in Arizona. So this is one part of the story of America, but it's not the only part of that story. I think the worry is one bad thing happens and it ignites a fire. And so far we haven't seen that. Let's hope we don't.
You know, not surprisingly, you put that so perfectly in perspective because both things are true. You are at a point of conflict there at a time when we worry about what might happen. But as you say, go a few blocks away where there are no protesters and there are no TV cameras and there's nobody pulling out their smartphone if you walked in to have a cup of coffee and it's people just living their lives normally. But you're in a state that's in a state of change, right? That has been Republican for a long, long time, and the Democrats are leading now. It looks like they've elected a Democratic senator, and change can create all kinds of, can stir some really deep emotions. CBC's David Common in Phoenix, Arizona. Great work. Thank you very much. Now, throughout the day, we've been hearing from U.S. voters disappointed, to put it mildly, with the results from today, and our special continues in a moment. But first, some of the voices we heard in support of Donald Trump today.
I'm really disputing the election. I am not going to be convinced until the time when the court or the Supreme Court declare Biden as a president.
It is not over. We need to do recounts. We need to fight it.
We're very
disappointed.
Disappointed in the election. We think that the Democrats sent in a whole bunch of ballots that weren't legitimate.
We just want clarity. We just want to know, beyond the shadow of a doubt, who has won the presidential race.
You committed voter fraud. Democrats suck. Cheaters. Cheaters.
I encourage President Trump to continue his lawsuits and, fight for, the stealing of this, to stop the stealing of this election.
We had the landslide on the Trump side,
put on them Facebook yesterday.
and it was no mirage, no red mirage.
If you let this down and don't fight, we're going to lose our freedom.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our election special continues on CBC News Network as we wait for the big moment of the night. So you are looking at a live aerial shot of Wilmington, Delaware. We are expected to hear from President-elect Joe Biden when he takes to the podium to address supporters in about 19 minutes from now. We will take you there live on CBC News Network, and we are back in a moment.
Welcome back to our election special here on CBC News Network. We are moments away from hearing from President-elect Joe Biden. And here is a look at the crowd that is gathering in Wilmington, Delaware, a similar scene from Biden's drive-in rallies during the campaign.
Cornell Brooks is a professor with the Harvard Kennedy School. He joins us from Manassas, Virginia. So welcome, sir. I'm curious, how would you, for a Canadian audience we've been watching from afar, you know, you're our neighbors, we've been separated from you for a while because of the pandemic, but we're watching. And I'm curious, how would you describe this moment in American history to us?
I would simply say it is a moment of elation and relief. Elation that we have elected Vice President Joe Biden as president and Kamala Harris, Senator Kamala Harris, as vice president. And it is a moment in which we are elated in terms of the reclaiming, the restoration of democracy, because for the last 4 years, we have literally been living through a near-death experience of democracy. We've seen presidential norms violated. We've seen civil rights violated. We have seen our commonly shared and widely shared values transgressed and violated again and again. And so I would simply say to my friends in Canada that Americans, many Americans who supported this president-elect are probably twice as happy as Justin Trudeau and most world leaders, certainly those who are not autocrats, at the possibility and now the probability, the inevitability of Vice President Biden becoming President Biden.
And I'm going to make a leap here that part of when you say happy, it's because there are some expectations, and I'm curious what they are.
Well, there's the expectation at a ground level, fundamentally, that the dignity of the White House will be restored, that we will have a president who endeavors to bring people together, to have America stand at the side of our allies and against our opponents and enemies, that the civil rights agenda will be restored, that we will take climate change seriously, that we will embrace an immigration policy that does not embrace xenophobia, and that this country will be the country many of us aspire for it to be. And note that we will recognize our largest trading partner, with whom we share the longest border, with whom many, I should say, for whom many Americans, certainly African Americans, regard as a place of promise. That is to say, Canada, for years, represented a place of promise, a promised land, if you will, for African Americans in slavery. And so we're looking for not only a restoration of normalcy, we're looking for reclaiming of our democracy, symbolic and substantive.
And sir, when you look at I mean, when the voting is officially tabulated and people start breaking down the demographics, there is no doubt that they will look to cities like Detroit, Philadelphia, Atlanta, not just Georgia, you know, Pennsylvania, Michigan, but these urban centers, these majority black cities, and black voters in particular. Has the Democratic Party, do you think, earned that vote, or is it a type of IOU?
Well, it's both. The Democratic Party, by nominating Senator Kamala Harris, by embracing a civil rights agenda, by recognizing the carnage of mass incarceration, by recognizing the harm of President Trump as a xenophobe, as a racist, as an anti-Semite, they won the hearts and the minds of the majority of African-American voters and a majority of American voters. And so it is a recognition of what this Biden presidency represents. And yes, it is an IOU in this sense. Those who voted last, those who voted with the greatest risk, those whose votes were suppressed are the very votes that Vice President Biden relied upon to become President Biden. So yes, he owes a great debt of gratitude to African Americans, but as significantly, as importantly, he owes a great debt of gratitude to the majority of Americans who have elected him and most Americans who trust that he will bring the country together.
All right, Cornell Brooks, sir, thank you very much. Just so you know, as you're listening, we've been playing pictures of Joe Biden's convoy approaching Wilmington, Delaware, that parking lot. We've been watching that over the last few days, which means it's not long now before his family, the woman who will be First Lady, Joe Biden, his Vice President-elect, Kamala Harris, and her husband, who will be the second gentleman, will be taking to that stage. We will go back to that as soon as it happens. But that was Cornell Brooks, a professor with the Harvard Kennedy School, who joined us from Manassas, Virginia. So we have been showing you scenes of people celebrating across the United States today. And what about the man who will soon be U.S. president? Well, this is a photo tweeted by Biden's granddaughter, Naomi Biden. It shows the family huddled around the president-elect in a big group hug. There is no caption in the tweet, only today's date, and that says enough.
All right, let's check in now with senior correspondent Susan Ormiston. She's outside the campaign headquarters, the Biden campaign headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. The man set to become the 46th U.S. president, as we saw in that motorcade arriving. And Susan, from where you are, what are you seeing now?
Yeah, excitement mounting, finally. People expressing their unbridled enthusiasm for a change in America. And I think we're going to hear from President-elect Joe Biden inspirational words tonight. He was running some of his campaign videos talking about character, about integrity, about how truth matters. We're going to hear all these things in his remarks tonight. Kamala Harris will join him. She will speak first. Then Joe Biden. It's a bit of a tailgate party out here. Ian, you'll know what that is. People in their cars and vans. They've been invited to this parking lot tonight, socially distant. Not everybody could come. And this is the way they've run this campaign. So we're seeing flags and music, and people are sitting on tops of their vehicles, craning their necks to get a view of this stage. This is where Joe Biden accepted the nomination for the Democratic Party back in August, and this is where he's going to deliver the biggest speech of his political life tonight, a long political life. As I said, 48 years ago tonight, he was elected a junior senator from Delaware. They are going to come out on that stage, which they've turned into quite an interesting set, just broadcasting images on the buildings around. There's lots of music. I think everybody here is relieved that finally they get to do this. They've had it set up for several days. This election week, day 5 of the U.S. election, is finally over with the winner, Joe Biden, coming here. Wilmington is his home, Ian. He's lived here most of his life, and he's bringing it home to Delaware tonight.
You know, throughout this election, we've been talking about the path to the presidency, and usually when I've been talking about that, it's how do you get to 270 votes. But, you know, you touched on the fact that for Joe Biden, this path has been a mountain climb, and it's taken a long time, and he's tried before, and he's finally on the verge of winning that prize, the most powerful political office in the world, quite frankly. And you've had a chance to talk to people from Delaware. You talked about this a little earlier on, but I want to ask you more about this, that a son of Delaware is about to become, I assume the first time, I can't think of another president from Delaware. A son of Delaware is about to become the president, and there is great pride in that state, Susan.
I talked to a 55-year-old man outside the fence today, and oh my gosh, he had this wonderful anecdote. He said, I was in the barber shop when we got the news, and the barber turned to everyone and said, let's pray. And he said, we did. We prayed for the president. What a scene. His wife said, I was having a pedicure, and I couldn't yelp out loud. She said, so I just whooped once, and then reveled in the idea that for her, this marks a huge change in America. She called it a restoration. When I asked restoration, what an interesting word, she said, yes, restoring decency, restoring civility, restoring that character matters, as we've heard from Joe Biden. He made soul part of his campaign. He called it the soul of the nation. It was displayed behind him. And, you know, someone remarked the other night, in the couple of nights we've seen Joe Biden speak briefly to Americans in this long waiting period, we never heard the word I. He didn't say I once. What a difference from the current president in his public remarks. We're going to hear about inspiration. We're going to hear about unifying the country. We're going to hear about some of the issues, coronavirus, the economy. But I think what's here tonight is, you know, Joe Biden. We know Joe is how the primary went. We know Joe. People in Delaware definitely know Joe. They feel comfortable with this man. He's been around. He's worked with both sides of the political divide. They are investing a lot of hope in him tonight. And I was thinking, getting ready tonight to talk to you all, Ian, is, boy, this must be such a great moment, but probably one of the best moments too, because tomorrow the job starts and it gets pretty difficult. Pretty difficult, the mountain he has yet to climb to make this country come together after such a tumultuous 4 years. So I'm pretty sure he is going to be enjoying it.
Yeah, well, let's stay in the moment, because I can remember watching that moment when presidents-elect step on a stage and the music plays. Of course, not in a pandemic, but we'll still hear music. We won't see the crowds as big as they are. Electrifying moments. I have never been there in person. You're about to witness that. We will see it on TV, but we'll also hear what it's like from you to be there. Susan Ormiston, we'll come back to you in a short time.
All right, so reaction is pouring in from around the world to the news of Biden's win. The CBC's Natasha Fatah is following this angle for us. So, Natasha, what's the sort of reaction that you're seeing?
Well, it's overwhelming, Adrian, and it's not surprising considering anything that happens on a national level in the United States affects the rest of the world, including and most especially the selection of a new president. So we are seeing reaction from the Netherlands, from Qatar, Egypt, Denmark, all over the world. Let's begin with one of the U.S.'s closest allies, and that would, of course, be Great Britain, where Boris Johnson has issued a tweet in which he congratulates both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for what he describes as a historic visit. But in that same statement, he says, okay, now we've got lots of work to get done. He talks about climate change, talks about trade, and talks about security. And we get that sense also from other European leaders who are focusing in on some of the work that needs to be done. They're immediately wanting to get back at it because for so long, for many of these European leaders, they haven't been able to work together with Donald Trump. There's been a degree of adversarialness to this whole process. So certainly from Giuseppe Conte in Italy, from the Spanish Prime Minister, from Angela Merkel in Germany, and from Emmanuel Macron in France, they're saying, okay, let's work together. And Emmanuel Macron specifically said, we're facing a number of challenges, not least of which is COVID-19, where the numbers are unbelievable in the United States, and they're also unbelievably high throughout Western Europe, including in France today. Tens of thousands of people have contracted COVID-19 once again. How will that be tackled? How will the issue of Islamist extremism that France is once again having to deal with, will Biden be tackling that? And will he show a forceful voice, or will he be more neutral in his tone as compared to the French president? So let's go further afield. Think about the Middle East. Lots of tweets that we're seeing have to do with a call for peace, whether it's the King of Jordan or it's the leadership in Iraq. They're saying we want peacefulness to be restored to the Middle East, and the U.S. always plays a critical role in how things unfold there. But interesting tweet coming from Ayatollah Khamenei. Let's bring that up, where he has said that he has described what is taking place there as the situation in the United States. What they themselves say about their elections is a spectacle. This is an example of the ugly face of liberal democracy in the United States, regardless of the outcome. One thing is absolutely clear: the definite political, civil, and moral decline of the U.S. regime. Unbelievably harsh there. Let's leave it on a good note, Adrian, and bring up Narendra Modi of India, who gives a wink and a nod to Kamala Harris, who is, of course, half Indian, half Jamaican, and he refers to her chittis, which is her Indian family awaiting her return to India.
Natasha, thanks very much. And we certainly know that there were plenty of prayers at a Hindu temple for a Biden-Harris victory. We saw pictures of that earlier this week. So you can see in part of your frame here, we are still looking at the Wilmington, Delaware parking lot that has become the headquarters for the Biden campaign. We did see the convoy approaching not that long ago, and the expectation is that the Biden-Harris ticket will be approaching that podium very soon.
But that is the hottest ticket in town right now, to be part of that tailgate party and to watch the president and vice president-elect take the stage and give their speeches. Not hard to imagine how exciting it would be in there. Of course, the moment there starts to be the program beginning in Wilmington, we will go to that. But just before we do, let's go to Philadelphia, because Pennsylvania will forever be associated with this presidency as the state that essentially put Biden over the top. And the CBC's Stephen D'Souza will forever be associated with Philadelphia after the fantastic work that he's done today. Let's check in with him now. Working the crowd, are you, Stephen?
Yeah, sorry, just they've got some loud music over here. And actually, it was interesting earlier, the Trump supporters, about 10 of them on the other side of the fence, were kind of trolling the Biden supporters that are left here by playing an old speech of Donald Trump. So it's kind of surreal at this moment in history right now, hearing Donald Trump's voice from about a week or two ago, addressing this crowd. So it's kind of interesting. What's left here in front of the convention center is less celebratory, perhaps, than in the past. We've seen, I would say it's both sides kind of trolling each other at this point right now, but we do have some folks over here we'll just say hi to and give us a sense of how you're feeling right now and what's going on with we won't talk about what's going on over here, but just tell me how you're feeling.
I'm feeling very excited that we finally have somebody in office that will make a change to this country. And we have the first female black vice president, Kamala Harris. I'm so happy that she's in office now. And
what does that mean for you?
It benefits me now because we finally have somebody that will consider females as
equals.
Yeah, equal, and give us more better opportunities so we can be have equal pay as men and have equal period, everything equul.
Have you been out on the streets all day today, or what?
No, it's my first time being out.
So I see your hat. Are you just coming from work?
I just came from work.
So, were you just excited to be out here now?
I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
How would you describe the vibe right now?
It's very energetic. Very energetic.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So yeah, they've got the tunes going here. We'll see if we can work our way through the crowd a little bit. We've got somebody handing out hand sanitizer. There we go. Mind if we just ask you about how you're feeling today?
I'm feeling very, very optimistic. I counted ballots. I know they're all true. And here we are trying to be safe out in Philadelphia. I'm trying to give hand sanitizer to the crowd and celebrate as safely as we can.
What are you looking forward to in a Biden presidency?
I am looking forward to racial equality, women equality, and healthcare changes.
How difficult is that going to be given the fact that the president-elect, Joe Biden, is going to be dealing with most likely a Republican-controlled Congress? He's going to have limitations on what he'll be able to do.
Well, that's not most likely. We still have a runoff election in Georgia, and perhaps we will take over the Senate. We already have the House of Representatives, so I'm not gonna think about that until after he is out of office on January 20th.
Are you prepared for more elections?
Yeah, I will always be prepared for more elections, yes.
Do you worry, though, about the other side, the Trump supporters over there? And, some of them were telling me earlier that they're not going to stand down. They're going to keep fighting as long as the president keeps fighting. And how do you move forward as a country when that's still happening?
Yeah, I'm not very worried about that. I'm not scared. I think that conversation needs to happen. I think that it can happen. I think education and conversation will move us forward as a country. I think that side will have to concede on some of their beliefs, and that will move us forward as a country.
Thank you very much. Can I get some hand sanitizer if you don't mind? Thank you very much. We are quite busy here, so I'm just going to take care of that. Thank you so much. And we're just going to move through the crowd over here. I see some lovely ladies. How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
We're with Canadian TV.
Hi.
I want to just ask you how you guys are feeling tonight. And
we're feeling elated. Like, this is the best night ever right now. We finally needed some good news for 2020, so this is really a good night. We happy.
Definitely pleased. When I woke up this morning, a little later on, I think it was around 11 they made the announcement, completely happy. I said I was able to breathe, therefore. Because I've been holding my breath for the last 4 or 5 days. Yes, I was very happy.
How does it feel that Pennsylvania and Philadelphia was, what pushed Biden over the finish line?
Yes, we came through for Biden.
Definitely.
I mean-
Definitely. I think that this country definitely knows that Black Lives Matter. You know what I'm saying? Because we definitely came through. I think Philadelphia, even as a whole, every minority, every culture, because Trump just spent like the last 4 years just basically degrading us. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that because Philadelphia is an all-inclusive city, that we definitely stood up and made our voices heard.
I want to ask you about that because, I saw a story from one of the local media saying that in the suburbs, the defund the police, racial justice movement may have hurt some of the votes in the suburbs.
Yeah.
But obviously that motivated you, right?
Definitely. It definitely was a motivating factor. Like, I think that a lot of people pretty much have been counting down maybe since about January, like we're all going to go vote. But I just think with the few instances that happened throughout the year, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, you know what I'm saying? Even with the quotes of bad things happen in Philadelphia, you just kind of motivated us to drop what we were doing and come vote. It didn't matter, like, you know what I mean?
Did you guys vote in person or by mail? I'm curious. And if you did vote by mail, did you actually put it in the post office box or did you drop it off?
I actually took my ballot to the voting polls, and I dropped it off there.
Because
just in case the lines were long, because I am a working, United States citizen. In case the lines were long, I wanted to be able to still vote and have my vote counted. So I took the ballot just in case I wasn't able to pull the lever.
How about you?
I voted in person. I know they were talking about with Trump, with his supporters, and just like, oh, we're the silent majority. And I wanted to be like, it's not just y'all coming out to the polls today on Tuesday. We coming out here too, So I did vote in person.
And what did the lineups look like where you were?
The lineups weren't bad at all. At my polling place, they weren't bad. I was able to walk in, cast my ballot, and go out and have some conversation with some people. So, yeah.
Just looking forward and moving forward as a country, you see the Trump supporters over there. And there's a lot of people in Pennsylvania even, that's why it was so close, that voted for Donald Trump. He got more support than he did last time around. Hardly a repudiation of him in this election. So how do you see the country moving forward?
Well, we realized that we didn't want to see a repeat of that. So we came out stronger. It's our understanding from what the media tells us that we didn't come out for Hillary Clinton. But we did show ourselves as a present force this time for Biden, because we definitely need to change. He has not acknowledged us at all as brown and black people. He refused to denounce white supremacists, and he refused to mention the names of the people who were killed. So that's basically him conceding to the white supremacists to please them. So yeah, we needed to come out and definitely show that there is a presence here that needs to be acknowledged.
I just think moving forward, hopefully, that even on both sides, a lot of healing can be done, a lot of coming together, because although we differ on things, we all pretty much have the same core values. It's just that we are really split on who should lead this country. And for me, being a nurse, like a healthcare worker, a frontline worker, and stuff like that, dealing with the shortage of PPE, and just him just seeming like he just doesn't care about people in general. Even if we take minorities out of it, you just don't care about life in general. So for me, I'm hoping that these next 4 years just really be a process of healing, just like I said, on both sides.
You've been dealing with COVID as well. Being a healthcare worker, dealing with the pandemic, is that something you hope is addressed in a different way with President Biden?
Yes. I'm definitely looking forward to how he addresses this matter, because like I said, looking at it from a healthcare point of view, I know people are like, oh, I'm tired of wearing masks, and I'm tired of being in the house, and I'm tired of restrictions, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I'm just like, we kind of might need a little bit more restriction, especially with the cases rising up. I'm watching loved ones have to say goodbye to their family time and time again. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I think we do need some more of a sort of a restriction in place just to try to get things back under control. But with those restrictions, I think that a stimulus package needs to come as well. You know what I mean? To help curb, you know, families that are home. So,
ladies, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So, her mask says Black Queen, and it seems like the Black Queens were the kingmakers in this election. We'll send it back to you guys in Toronto.
All right, Stephen, fantastic work. Again, you know, Adrian, there's a real eloquence in just hearing people talk, right? Two people at random that Stephen just came up to. One of the things that one of those women said is that everyone knows now Black Lives Matter because we came through. And that kind of is a theme you're hearing here, right? That in Black America, the amount of support for Biden well, in your interview when you were talking to the professor about, is this a repayment or is it an IOU?
And, you know, what I also hear in listening to them talk, there's this longing. I think Americans miss each other. You know, the divisions that they have had that didn't start with Donald Trump. Certainly they didn't start, but he sort of, you know, there was a fracture line and then it was poked at and the chasm got bigger. But when you hear some people talking, they miss each other. There's this mournful thing of this trying to get together and, you know, my brother believes this and I believe that, and Thanksgiving's coming up. And I think there is, everyone has been through a lot in 2020. I think Americans feel like they have been through a great deal. And again, you look at the numbers of what the people they are legitimately losing every single day. They've had a rough go of it.
Yeah, except maybe for the people in Phoenix. They may not miss each other. The ones, the specific ones that we saw in David Common's little tour.
Indeed. So, you know, we're looking at these pictures. They haven't moved much, but we have seen two separate convoys, one for presumably Vice President-elect Kamala Harris and her entourage, and then one for President-elect Joe Biden and his family approaching that stage in Wilmington, Delaware. I think we have every expectation of hearing first from Kamala Harris and then from Joe Biden, and, you know, scrub your brain of the big balloon drops and the big concerts in the park. This is hashtag 2020.
I'll tell you one thing I'm interested in is to hear what the Vice President-elect has to say. You know, as Susan's been pointing out, and we'll go to her in just a sec, we kind of know, we think we know what President-elect Biden is going to say, because we heard some of it, I think it was last night, and it's the kind of message you'd expect, right? Kamala Harris is, first of all, I think, a better orator than Joe Biden.
Yes.
You know, her cross-examination skills that we've seen in Senate hearings, she can just eviscerate somebody. Tonight's not the night for cross-examination. Tonight's, well, beyond that though, I'm really curious to hear what kind of tone she has and what kind of direction she takes us in.
Well, dollars to donuts, I think probably what you will also see tonight, in addition to what she says, is the mere fact of her and the presence of her. You will probably see on social media feeds little kids, little girls around the world and certainly around the United States being brought to the TV. And if they're at home, again, bring them. Have them stand by and watch this moment.
I heard Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota earlier today on one of the American channels saying that she still remembers to this day what Geraldine Ferraro was wearing when she was introduced as the vice presidential candidate. And she described the dress and the pearls and all that sort of stuff. And now Senator Klobuchar says as a little girl, that made her real. I mean, you hear this rhetoric, right? In theory, but this was an example of that rhetoric in reality, right? That Senator Klobuchar remembers the vice presidential candidate, ultimately not successful, but it inspired her to feel like, hey, you know what, maybe for me someday. And of course, she wants to be president herself. Maybe that'll happen.
Indeed. Susan Ormiston, our friend, you are there in Wilmington, Delaware. I have a feeling this is about to start. You probably have a better sense of it.
Not exactly, but I'm pretty sure that last cavalcade was the president-elect. It was long. It went on for a long time with all the medical vehicles and black SUVs now that he is accustomed to as a vice president. But times 5 maybe. We do know his security detail has increased now that he is the president-elect, as has the security around his home here in Wilmington, Delaware. I want to pick up on a point that Ian made about Kamala Harris. Interesting, yes, we don't know exactly what she's going to say, but I would wager she may not use the words, "If I can do this, you can too," but I think that will be part of her message, in part because of what you've been talking about, inspiring little girls, young girls of color, particularly in America now, that they can reach the highest job, the second highest job in the land, and that she will pave their way, break the ceiling for them, and they can come after her. So this is a turning point for a new generation, and important too because Joe Biden represents an older generation, the oldest president-elect in American history. He's been around this block a few times, more than 40 years in fact. So the combination of the two will be a very interesting dynamic, and I think people are really looking for signals tonight of what that will be like. I'm pretty sure that we're going to hear, yes, the messages from Joe Biden of inspiration, of hope, of a return to decency, a return to a rule of law where words matter and the things you say matter. And I'm quite convinced that we won't see policy being tweeted out from this president once he is inaugurated in January. So a whole-scale change in how communication happens from the highest job in the land through to the American people. We're going to see some of that tonight. People are really keen to see how he presents himself now that he has the job. You know, we often talk about you don't know how a person will perform until they have the job. He's got loads of experience, and that's part of what people were comfortable about, voting for this man as a moderate. He will get pressure from the left to pull his policies to the left. That's one of the challenges he has. And of course, we'll hear about unity, how he will help, as the leader, soothe some of these deep, deep differences. American Thanksgiving will be a couple of weeks from now will be difficult, not just because of political differences between families, but also mainly because of the pandemic, which is raging still in this country. We expect to hear from Biden soon about his definite direct plans about how to control the virus, something he said President Trump failed to do.
Susan, what is it that people in Delaware, aside from the presence of him, want from him? What's your sense of what that state in particular needs?
No more drama, no more chaos. They want Joe Biden to represent Delaware as a moderate, as the guy they know Joe, not to have any big surprises, not to lean too far left, to be in the middle and to bridge different parts of the party and to bridge different parts of America. You know, Delaware is a small state. It's a Democratic state. There was no doubt in how it would vote this time. And he's been living here for a long time. You know, he grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, as we all know, and believes Pennsylvania has been very good to him, clearly in this election. But Delaware has been his home, and he's commuted from here to Washington almost every day of his professional career, in part to take care of his family. People often talk, especially in Delaware, about Joe Biden's tragedies. You know, just after he was elected as the junior senator from Delaware 48 years ago tonight, his wife and young daughter were killed in a car crash several weeks later. So this man clearly knows what tragedy is, and the people around here, they want him to be Joe. They want him to continue to have heart. That's what a lot of people talk to me today about, decency.
Susan, thank you very, very much for that. I know you'll be, we'll talk to you after because this is going to be interesting.
And as you're watching CBC News Network, don't change the channel. We are going to bring you the president-elect, the vice president-elect. We're going to hear from them in just a matter of minutes. And as we wait, let's check in with Paul Hunter in Washington. And Paul, let's imagine a world far in the future, January 21st, and former President Donald Trump. What happens then?
Yeah. good reminder that indeed his term ends noon on January 20th. That's in the U.S. Constitution. He cannot just decide not to leave the White House, as I think Joe Biden, or his team anyway, put out in a tweet. You know, there are the means to escort trespassers out of the White House if he decides to hang on by his fingernails. And indeed, that's a lifetime away in many ways. But, you know, there's been a lot of speculation here about, you know, so what then for Donald Trump in terms of influence on the Republican Party, on U.S. politics going forward? To me, there's a couple of ways to look at it. One is that there's an amazing thing about the office of the presidency. You inherit all kinds, immeasurable power when you're given that job, when you are allowed to work in the Oval Office. When you leave the Oval Office, you lose all that. It's gone. Like, it's sort of like what happens in the Oval Office stays in the Oval Office in a way in terms of power. So he loses all of that. We talk about Barack Obama now, or Bill Clinton, or George W. Bush. Nobody cares, in a sense, right? They're on the speaker circuit, but what they say, besides having, you know, persuasive powers, perhaps in some ways, doesn't really matter. It's true of all ex-presidents. It's not judging anybody. What matters is when you're the president. That's what Donald Trump has right now. He will not have that January 21st. That's point number one. Point number two, he's not like them. You know, the people who, as we've seen in this campaign and for the past 4 years, the people who believe in him, who support him, are true believers, are devout. They see in him, we've talked about this so often the last 4 years, they see in him a different kind of leader, somebody who is like them, all the reasons that they voted for him. They don't want to lose him. They will stay devoted to him. And he has an easy way to communicate with them. It's called Twitter. He has 88 million followers who will read his stuff, right? And he knows that they will do what he wants them to do. They will believe in who he wants them to believe in. So, to the Republican Party, people who want to get themselves nominated to run the next primary season, let's say, you don't have the blessing of Donald Trump. Theoretically, he may pull out his little iPhone and say, don't go for this guy, go for that person. Don't go for her, go for him. Whatever it is. The power that he may wield after the presidency, unlike previous presidents, and he won't be afraid to use it, goes the thinking, maybe significantly more than we've seen. And it may, thus he may continue to influence the politics of this country even when he's not in office. And the last possibility, of course, notwithstanding his age, is that he decides to run again. You know, there's already been whispers of 2024. Some people, you know, is it tongue-in-cheek, is it not? He'll be significantly older, well, 4 years older. But let's not rule that out, or for that matter, Donald Trump Jr. It goes the continued thinking on that. So while we'll see the end of Donald Trump, theoretically, on January 20th, lawsuits and recounts, et cetera, notwithstanding, we likely have not seen the end of Donald Trump, and likely not in meaningful ways that matter to the politics of this country.
Yeah, just stay with us, Paul. We are looking at three things in our screen right now. Well, one of them is me. It was Paul Hunter just a moment ago. We're also looking at wide shots from Wilmington, Delaware, as we expect we know that the Vice President and President-elect will soon be speaking. And then in the lower corner, I guess that is the lectern where they're going to be speaking from. So the moment that happens, either Adrian or I will jump in if you're in mid-sentence. So I apologize in advance, Paul. But for people watching at home, just to let you know, we're going to go to that scene in Delaware as soon as something starts happening. But Paul, let me ask you this, and you know, you use the word influence, and I do think, you know, like Donald Trump has proven that he is the ultimate influencer, so there's that. But also, you know, on a night where Joe Biden is being celebrated and his supporters, we've heard in interviews from our reporters in the field, are talking about how they're so thankful that Donald Trump is out of the picture. We can't lose sight of the fact that Donald Trump's political instincts have been generally terrific, right? He won the Republican nomination when virtually no one thought he could. He won the election in 2016 when virtually no one thought he could, and though he lost this election, he got, as we've said many times, the second most votes of anyone in presidential election history. And so you wonder how, besides wielding his influence, where his populism and instincts may lead him over the next year or two. Have you given that any thought, Paul?
You know, I would say to that, Ian, the lesson of Donald Trump is that his style of politics, his style of presidency, his style of leadership that has just been rejected by 75 million Americans who voted for Joe Biden, it works. You know, you're right to say it got him elected. And it got 70 million other Americans voting for him again in the face of how he's handled the pandemic and the economic fallout from that, in the face of all the things that have made headlines in this, you know, the so-called liberal elite media, for which he's been pilloried in many quarters of this country, is very effective. And there's a lesson in that for politicians everywhere. I mean, it consistently, I was just getting at this in the previous answer. You know, I've asked Trump, what do you like about the guy? It's because he's real. It's because he's authentic. Yeah, he says locker room talk, and he says this, and he does that. And by the way, a lot of people, as I think Adrian might have been noting earlier, this is the first time a lot of people have paid attention to politics, you know, at times like this. But the rest of the time, they're not noticing. Like the stuff that Donald Trump has been doing, like that he gets criticized for, nobody cares, right? What are you doing for me? He understood that. So the power of Donald Trump may continue just in somebody else taking that mantle, taking that approach, not the bull in the china shop kind of thing, and not giving a rat's behind about what anybody thinks about him. The authenticity in that matters to a lot of people. You know, you could argue that Donald Trump wasn't the right guy to sort of speak to the desires of all these millions of people who voted for him because he was too flawed, right? But the broad approach, man oh man, like it works. There's a real lesson there for politicians everywhere.
Well, you mentioned Adrian. Of course, she sat in the chair that you're sitting in, figuratively, if not literally, as a Washington correspondent.
Yeah.
Probably. Why don't you put a question to Paul?
No, I was just going to say, Paul, you know, I've been sort of watching Twitter to see I'm trying to imagine what Donald Trump is doing right now. And as we've been talking about his Twitter feed, Mia, one of our producers, has been reminding me and Ian and I that as soon as Donald Trump is no longer president, he loses the public interest privilege of Twitter, which means that his tweets will be subjected to the same Twitter rules, if you will, as everyone else's. So nope, you're not going to get to incite violence. You're not going to get to spread false information about, allegedly, about coronavirus, et cetera, et cetera. So there will be some diminishing. But do you think, just from listening to what you're saying, his support of people who will be running in 2018, for example, do you think only the most Trumpian of Republican candidates will succeed? Or do you think even the cultural phenomenon of not seeing him that often will start to chip away at that?
Huh, there's a question.
Sorry, it's about 14 hours long, that question.
And we've run out of time. I don't know. I mean, another part of the speculation, of course, is that, you know, going back to 2016.
So, you know, I took so long to ask
we really
the question.
have run out of time?
I can't really listen to the answer because we have just seen our first glimpse of the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. See you later. Here she is, Kamala Harris, Vice President-elect, dressed in white. It is 100 years since women in the United States, some women, were given the right to vote. White, the color of suffragettes. That's not lost on anyone here. See if we can listen in, if we can get a good audio feed.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. So, thank you. Good evening. So, Congressman John Lewis, before his passing, wrote, "Democracy is not a state, it is an act." And what he meant was that America's democracy is not guaranteed. It is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. To guard it and never take it for granted. And protecting our democracy takes struggle, it takes sacrifice, but there is joy in it, and there is progress, because we, the people, have the power to build a better future. And was on the ballot in this election with the very soul of America at stake and the world watching, you ushered in a new day for America. To our campaign staff and volunteers, this extraordinary team, thank you for bringing more people than ever before into the democratic process. And for making this victory possible. To the poll workers and election officials across our country who have worked tirelessly to make sure every vote is counted. You have protected the integrity of our democracy. And to the American people who make up our beautiful country, thank you for turning out in record numbers to make your voices heard. And I know times have been challenging, especially the last several months. The grief, sorrow, and pain, the worries and the struggles. But we have also witnessed your courage, your resilience, and the generosity of your spirit. For 4 years, you marched and organized for equality and justice, for our lives and for our planet. And then you voted. And you delivered a clear message. You chose hope and unity, decency, science, and yes, truth. You chose Joe Biden as the next president of the United States of America. And Joe is a healer, a uniter, a tested and steady hand, a person whose own experience of loss gives him a sense of purpose that will help us as a nation reclaim our own sense of purpose. And a man with a big heart who loves with abandon. It's his love for Jill, who will be an incredible First Lady. It's his love for Hunter and Ashley and his grandchildren and the entire Biden family. And while I first knew Joe as vice president, I really got to know him as the father who loved Bo, my dear friend who we remember here today. And to my husband, Doug, and our children, Cole and Ella, and my sister Maya, and our whole family, I love y'all more than I can ever express. We are so grateful to Joe and Jill for welcoming our family into theirs on this incredible journey. And to the woman most responsible for my presence here today, my mother, Kamala Harris, who is always in our hearts. When she came here from India at the age of 19, she maybe didn't quite imagine this moment, but she believed so deeply in an America where a moment like this is possible. And so I am thinking about her and about the generations of women, Black women, Asian, white, Latina, Native American women who throughout our nation's history have paved the way for this moment tonight. Women who fought and sacrificed so much for equality and liberty and justice for all, including the Black women who are often, too often, overlooked, but so often prove they are the backbone of our democracy. All the women who have worked to secure and protect the right to vote for over a century, 100 years ago with the 19th Amendment, 55 years ago with the Voting Rights Act, and now in 2020 with a new generation of women in our country who cast their ballots and continued the fight for their fundamental right to vote and be heard. Tonight, I reflect on their struggle, their determination, and the strength of their vision to see what can be unburdened by what has been. And I stand on their shoulders. And what a testament it is to Joe's character that he had the audacity to break one of the most substantial barriers that exists in our country and select a woman as his vice president. But while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last. Because every little girl watching tonight sees that this is a country of possibilities. And to the children of our country, regardless of your gender, our country has sent you a clear message. Dream with ambition, lead with conviction, and see yourselves in a way that others may not, simply because they've never seen it before. But know that we will applaud you every step of the way. And to the American people, no matter who you voted for, I will strive to be a vice president like Joe was to President Obama, loyal, honest, and prepared, waking up every day thinking of you and your family. Because now is when the real work begins, the hard work, the necessary work, the good work, the essential work to save lives and beat this epidemic, to rebuild our economy so it works for working people, to root out systemic racism in our justice system and society, to combat the climate crisis, to unite our country and heal the soul of our nation. And the road ahead will not be easy, but America is ready. And so are Joe and I. We have elected a president who represents the best in us, a leader the world will respect and our children will look up to, a commander-in-chief who will respect our troops and keep our country safe, and a president for all Americans. And it is now my great honor to introduce the President-elect of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
Hello, my fellow Americans, and the people who brought me to the dance, Delawareans. I see my buddy Senator Tom Carper down there, and I think Senator Coons is there, and I think the governor's around. Is that Ruth Ann? And that former Governor Ruth Ann Minner. Most importantly, my sisters-in-law and my sister Valerie. Anyway. Folks, the people of this nation have spoken. They've delivered us a clear victory, a convincing victory, a victory for we the people. We've won with the most votes ever cast for a presidential ticket in the history of the nation. 74 million. What I must admit has surprised me. Tonight, we're seeing all over this nation, all cities and all parts of the country, indeed across the world, an outpouring of joy, of hope, renewed faith in tomorrow, bring a better day. And I'm humbled by the trust and confidence you've placed in me. I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide, but unify, who doesn't see red states and blue states, only sees the United States. And work with all my heart, with the confidence of the whole people, to win the confidence of all of you. And for that is what America, I believe, is about. It's about people. And that's what our administration will be all about. I sought this office to restore the soul of America, to rebuild the backbone of this nation, the middle class, and to make America respected around the world again, and to unite us here at home. It's the honor of my lifetime that so many millions of Americans have voted for that vision. And now, the work of making that vision is real. It's a task, the task of our time. Folks, as I said many times before, I'm Jill's husband. And I would not be here without her love and tireless support of Jill and my son Hunter and Ashley, my daughter, and all our grandchildren and their spouses and all our family. They're my heart. Jill's a mom, a military mom, an educator, and she has dedicated her life to education. But teaching isn't just what she does, it's who she is. For American educators, this is a great day for y'all. You're going to have one of your own in the White House. And Jill's going to make a great First Lady. I'm so proud of her. And I'll have the honor of serving with the fantastic Vice President who you just heard from, Kamala Harris, who makes history as the first woman first black woman, the first woman from South Asian descent, the first daughter of an immigrant ever elected in this country. Don't tell me it's not possible in the United States. It's long overdue. And we're reminded tonight of those who fought so hard for so many years to make this happen. But once again, America's bent the arc of the moral universe more toward justice. Kamala, Doug, like it or not, your family, you become an honorary Biden, there's no way out. To all those of you who volunteered and worked the polls in the middle of this pandemic, local elected officials, you deserve a special thanks from the entire nation. And to my campaign team and all the volunteers and all who gave so much of themselves to make this moment possible, I owe you. I owe you. I owe you everything. And to all those who supported us, I'm proud of the campaign we built and ran. I'm proud of the coalition we put together, the broadest and most diverse coalition in history. Democrats, Republicans, independents, progressives, moderates, conservatives, young, old, urban, suburban, rural, gay, straight, transgender, white, Latino, Asian, Native American. I mean it, especially those moments, and especially those moments when this campaign was at its lowest ebb. The African-American community stood up again for me. You've always had my back, and I'll have yours. I said at the outset, I wanted to represent this campaign to represent and look like America. We've done that. Now that's what I want the administration to look like and act like. For all those of you who voted for President Trump, I understand the disappointment tonight. I've lost a couple times myself, but now let's give each other a chance. It's time to put away the harsh rhetoric, lower the temperature, see each other again, listen to each other again. And to make progress, we have to stop treating our opponents as our enemies. They are not our enemies. They are Americans. They're Americans. The Bible tells us to everything there is a season, a time to build, a time to reap and a time to sow, and a time to heal. This is the time to heal in America. Now this campaign is over. What is the will of the people? What is our mandate? I believe it's this. Americans have called upon us to marshal the forces of decency, the forces of fairness, to marshal the forces of science and the forces of hope in the great battles of our time. The battle to control the virus, the battle to build prosperity, the battle to secure your family's health care, the battle to achieve racial justice and root out systemic racism in this country, and the battle to save our planet by getting climate under control, the battle to restore decency, defend democracy, and give everybody in this country a fair shot. That's all they're asking for, a fair shot. Folks, our work begins with getting COVID under control. We cannot repair the economy, restore our vitality, or relish life's most precious moments, hugging our grandchildren, our children, our birthdays, weddings, graduations, all the moments that matter most to us until we get it under control. On Monday, I will name a group of leading scientists and experts as transition advisors to help take the Biden-Harris COVID plan and convert it into an action blueprint that will start on January the 20th, 2021. That plan will be built on bedrock science. It will be constructed out of compassion, empathy, and concern. I will spare no effort, none, or any commitment to turn around this pandemic. Folks, I'm a proud Democrat, but I will govern as an American president. I'll work as hard for those who didn't vote for me as those who did. Let this grim era of demonization in America begin to end here and now. The refusal of Democrats and Republicans to cooperate with one another, it's not some mysterious force beyond our control. It's a decision, a choice we make. And if we can decide not to cooperate, then we can decide to cooperate. And I believe that this is part of the mandate given to us from the American people. They want us to cooperate in their interest. And that's the choice I'll make. And I'll call on Congress, Democrats and Republicans alike, to make that choice with me. The American story is about slow yet steadily widening the opportunities in America. And make no mistake, too many dreams have been deferred for too long. We must make the promise of the country real for everybody, no matter their race, their ethnicity, their faith, their identity, or their disability. Folks, America has always been shaped by inflection points, by moments in time where we've made hard decisions about who we are and what we want to be. Lincoln in 1860, coming to save the Union. FDR in 1932, promising a beleaguered country a new deal. JFK in 1960, pledging a new frontier. And 12 years ago, when Barack Obama made history, he told us, yes, we can. Well, folks, we stand at an inflection point. We have an opportunity to defeat despair, to build a nation of prosperity and purpose. We can do it. I know we can. I've long talked about the battle for the soul of America. We must restore the soul of America. Our nation is shaped by the constant battle between our better angels and our darkest impulses. And what presidents say in this battle matters. It's time for our better angels to prevail. Tonight, the whole world is watching America. And I believe at our best, America is a beacon for the globe. We will lead not only by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. I've always believed, many of you heard me say it, I've always believed we can define America in one word: possibilities. That, in America, everyone should be given an opportunity to go as far as their dreams and God-given ability will take them. You see, I believe in the possibilities of this country. We're always looking ahead to an America that's freer and more just, ahead to an America that creates jobs with dignity and respect, ahead of America that cures diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's, ahead to an America that never leaves anyone behind, ahead of America that never gives up, never gives in. This is a great nation. It's always been a bad bet to bet against America. We're a good people. This is the United States of America, and there's never been anything we've been not able to do when we've done it together. Folks, in the last days of the campaign, I began thinking about a hymn that means a lot to me and my family, particularly my deceased son, Bo. It captures the faith that sustains me and which I believe sustains America. And I hope it can provide some comfort and solace to 230,000 Americans who've lost a loved one to this terrible virus this year. My heart goes out to each and every one of you. Hopefully this hymn gives you solace as well. And it goes like this. And he will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, and make you to shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand. And now together, on eagle's wings, we embark on the work that God and history have called upon us to do. With full hearts and steady hands, with faith in America and in each other, with love of country, a thirst for justice, let us be the nation that we know we can be. A nation united, a nation strengthened, a nation healed. The United States of America, ladies and gentlemen, there's never been anything we've tried we've not been able to do. So remember, as my grandpapa, our grandpapa used to say when I walked out of his home when I was a kid up in Scranton, he said, "Joey, keep the faith." And our grandmother, when she was alive, she yelled, "No, Joey, spread it. Spread the faith. God love you all. May God bless America, and may God protect our troops." Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Joe Biden. He is always quick to introduce himself as Joe Biden's husband. She is about to be the First Lady, and of course, this is his very large and extended family. His children, his grandchildren there, and you heard him make reference to Beau Biden, his son, who died of brain cancer back in 2015. Young man who said to him, "Dad, you need to run." And you have to know Beau Biden is absolutely on his mind tonight.
You know, when I saw him giving his speech yesterday, I thought, I didn't know quite what tone that he was trying to set, but it seemed like a very low-key speech. And now when I look back at it, maybe that's exactly what he wanted to do, because today, this was a speech that was filled with energy. It was filled with, he hopes, optimism. And it was filled with the kind of message we were expecting, although delivered in a much more forceful way than yesterday, reaching out to Trump supporters, for example. Repeating lines we've heard before, but they just seem a lot more relevant now, I think, when you realize that this is the man who will be president on January the 20th.
And this is the ticket. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and her husband, Doug Emhoff, the first, he will be the second gentleman. Her speech, too, the first three words of her speech were Congressman John Lewis. And that was so important for so many people to hear. She was quoting him as saying, "Democracy is not a state, it is an act." Look at that. And it was the work of Congressman Lewis and so many in Atlanta and Detroit and Philadelphia, who she acknowledged helped both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris get to where they are right now. Joe Biden said, "The African-American community has always had my back. I will have yours."
And when Kamala Harris mentioned that she is, as we have throughout, because it is so significant, a woman whose heritage is black and South Asian, and she talked about the importance of this night to women who are black, women who are South Asian, and then the list continued. White women, she said, Latina women, and clearly talking about representation in the new Democratic White House. This is something Joe Biden talked about as well, right? That he said they represented diversity, and he was going to make sure that that his White House, that his cabinet would represent it as well.
And if you check social media, there are pictures emerging throughout this night of people watching this moment with their kids. I think that this always happens for history, but Kamala Harris tipped to it in particular, talking about the little girls out there who she knows need to see this moment, need to see her there, need to see themselves reflected in this position of power.
You know, with every word, I was thinking, how is this landing for all those people who are watching at home? And that, you know, clearly if you're a supporter of the Democrats, it's a time of jubilation. And we got a sense of that from our reporters as they were talking to people in places like Philadelphia. But I can't help but wonder how this message will land with the people who voted for Donald Trump, the people that Joe Biden tried to reach out to today. How many of them were watching? Or if they do see clips of this, on what media will they? I mean, there's no way of guessing that, but that's going to be the big challenge, obviously, for Joe Biden.
I think it's going to be hard for all Americans to find a different path and a different way of communicating with each other. As always, we're keeping an eye on the American networks. Fox News has not left this scene for the better part of an hour. They are playing it without commentary. They're just letting the moment speak for itself. I mean, they're starting to, now that the fireworks are on, as we are, but for the crucial moments, they let it stand. So it's going to take some time for people to, and listen, I heard this at the inauguration of Donald Trump. I spoke with Trump supporters too, who said that people who didn't win would now have to put their anger away and give him a chance. This is exactly what Joe Biden is asking of them now, and we'll see how it goes.
One of the things you've been talking about really since Tuesday night is what would this moment be like, whoever it was for, whether it was for President Trump or President-elect Biden. Once a winner had been determined, in the time of COVID, how muted would the celebration be? Well, from here, it sounded very robust, right? The cheering, we're seeing the fireworks. I think we may even see the confetti that you keep talking about.
I'm excited for the confetti cannon.
But let's go to Susan Ormiston, who is getting a ground-level view of all of this. And from where you are, Susan, how does it sound? How does it feel? What is it like?
Well, I'm a sucker for fireworks, and I've been watching from our little perch here. This is quite a moment. Finally, the Democratic Party in America gets to celebrate. You know, this was a COVID campaign, so we didn't see this kind of enthusiasm, unbridled enthusiasm during the campaign. They just couldn't do it. Clearly, Joe Biden is not hiding in his basement, as the president often mocked. I was struck a little bit about the way he started. Hello. Hello. A humble beginning. He talked about honor, about restoring decency. He and Kamala Harris talked about love. They talked about heart. A lot of this we haven't heard in the last, certainly, few months from the campaign trail. There was no jeering, no booing, no thumbs down, no mockery, no fake news. It's a completely different America on display tonight. Still getting all those fireworks behind me. You really have to listen and watch these. They're quite amazing.
You know, Susan, at the beginning of that speech, I was just kind of joking to Adrian that Biden sounded a lot like the sort of the politician at the state fair. You know, he just had that like kind of golly gee sort of way about him. And then I was thinking for a moment that much has been made of Joe Biden's age. He is a politician from a different era because he is a man from a different era. And maybe there's an advantage to that. You know, often when people talk about his age, they talk about it in terms of a disadvantage. But you think about the world he grew up in. When he talks about his grandpappy, I think he called him. Again, it sounds like a story you might read written by Mark Twain, but this is part of Joe Biden's life. And so, you know, maybe that'll actually turn out to be his age, his experience, what he's seen in his life, not just the bad things, but the good things too. Maybe that'll actually turn out to be one of his advantages at a time when there's so much turmoil and we need a little bit of serenity.
Indeed, and I just for people watching at home, go ahead, Susan.
No, I was just going to remark that, I think it was the first debate, that disastrous debate where he said, I don't want to hear any of this malarkey. My 20-something son said, does anybody say malarkey anymore? So, he bridges so much. He talked about the coalition he believes he's built in this country, all across the country, moderates, conservatives, old, new, Democrats, Republicans, independents. He thinks that's what brought him to this spot in history. It's so much of this is timing. He's tried twice before unsuccessfully, and now he brings his seniority and his experience to a country that needs some restoration. So many of the things he talked about, I heard from people today. Decency, talking about heart. It was really reflecting what people are thinking tonight. And you heard a lot about you from both Kamala Harris and from President-elect Biden. You brought us here. You need this. We stand on your shoulders. Kamala Harris's speech was very inspirational, as we anticipated, talking to young women in this country and saying that they too have a path to the highest job in the land. She really leaned in on the fact that she is a woman to break through this ceiling and that Joe Biden helped her get there. And from standing here, the biggest cheers in this parking lot were when she talked about women and about the history and the future of women. She said, I'm the first, but I won't be the last. So that really has resonated for a lot of women in this country. Consider the difference you heard Donald Trump say on the campaign trail to suburban women, please love me. And Kamala Harris is saying, we stand on the shoulders of women who came before us, and we love you. It's just a completely different tone here. Of course, it needs to be reminded once again that nearly half of the voters in this country did not vote for this brand of government in this country. They voted for Trump brand, a populist. They wanted him to continue, and it's going to take a while for this to sink in about how different this is with the election of Joe Biden come January.
And I would say, likely to the credit of President-elect Joe Biden, while he talked about unity, while he reached out to Trump supporters, at the same time he didn't shy away from what will be on their agenda, dealing with issues that have been as divisive in the United States as COVID and climate change and racial justice, and those are clearly things that they are going to be addressing, and they're clearly things that the people that voted against Biden-Harris find as irritants or even more, but they didn't shy away from that.
No, I'm just struck by this. I don't know if we can hear what's happening on the stage there, but was just the family photo, if you will. The photo of the 46th president of the United States, who weirdly was the 47th vice president, and of course Kamala Harris. It's interesting when we talk, Susan, and hear you talking about Americans who are in pain, and I think at the end of the day, like everybody, people want to know that their kids can go to school and come home safely, that they can have jobs, they can feed their families. And once you take care of those basics, sometimes even in countries around the world that have had the most difficult problems, once you deal with that, they can start to deal with some of the rest. As I know you've seen in all the places you've been.
Indeed, but yeah, indeed, Adrian, but a lot of the division in this campaign was in response to the pandemic and how it was handled. Joe Biden has been very consistent in his approach to coronavirus, safe, cautious. Some people wondered if the type of campaign they ran would be successful, given that the president, even having gotten COVID and recovered, went out to those large rallies, his signature brand of campaigning, that maybe Joe Biden was making a mistake with his team by staying quiet, by only having a few people at his campaign, that there wasn't an energy. But in the end, this was a referendum on Donald Trump. And even though some would say that the Democrats didn't get the resounding win that they were looking for, it was about Donald Trump. It was less about Joe Biden and more about Donald Trump. So Joe Biden is a vehicle for the change that at least slightly more than half of the American voters wanted. He's not a perfect candidate. He didn't do well in the first part of the primaries, but he was deemed as the one who could probably be the best antidote to Donald Trump and the one who perhaps might be able to beat him, forming that coalition. But you know, he did make some news tonight. Monday, he says, we're going to go with a coronavirus transition team. We're going to rely on science. We're going to have the scientists in charge, and we're going to come up with a plan going forward about how to turn around the surge in cases in this country. This last week, during voting week, over 100,000 new cases a day. By Canadian standards, it makes your head spin. He's going to come up with a plan. That was what he said he would do, and he's indicated, signaling tonight, that that's first among his objectives. Adrian.
Susan Ormiston, again, thank you so very, very much. We really appreciate everything you and the team have done. I know that these nights never end for you. They go on and they become mornings, they become nights again. So I know we'll hear from you again. But for the moment, thank you very much. And for everyone at home who's been wondering, I just missed it. I saw part of it, but not all of it. We got you. At the top of the clock, we will be replaying the speeches again, so you can settle in and watch what you missed. But for the moment, someone else, take care, Susan. For the moment, someone else who has been watching carefully from Washington. Here's Donald Trump. No, here's Paul Hunter, who's joining us from the Washington Bureau tonight. Paul, I've been checking Donald Trump's Twitter feed, by the way, not a word in 4 hours.
Not on this. I lost you, Adrian.
Oh, it's okay.
Say that again, sorry.
It'll take me so long to ask the question that you'll get it all sorted. I'm just wondering, what did you make of that, and have you heard anything from the White House in response?
No, I was looking for that. I was checking the Twitter feed throughout, and unless something has happened lately, no. Trump did note earlier this evening that 71 million legal votes were cast for him, the most by any sitting president ever, for what that's worth. Presumably he was sitting in the White House watching this on TV. I imagine we'll hear his view before too long. When I was watching Joe Biden, I guess I'd say that rare is the president or president-elect who doesn't invoke the words of Abraham Lincoln, but when he said, this is the time for our better angels to prevail, I thought, isn't that a welcome perspective? And I imagine many tens of millions of Americans are thinking the same thing. The language he used, Susan was talking about some of this, it's time to lower the temperature, to listen, to consider that our opponents are not our enemies. At one point he said aloud, I think, what is our mandate? Well, it is fairness, decency, science, hope, to go after the virus, to seek prosperity, to improve healthcare. When was the last time you heard any of this from, I want to call him the president, he's of course the president-elect, but we haven't heard this kind of language from somebody in that kind of position, I would say, since before, this week in 2016. And again, I think many, many, many millions of Americans are grateful to be in this position now where that is what their leadership is espousing. Having said all that, I couldn't help but think, as Ian, I think you were mentioning, like Barack Obama when he was elected, as that terrible recession was kicking in, Joe Biden's inherited a hot mess. COVID, the economy, a divided country. I mean, the racial injustices in this country haven't magically gone away. They're still there. I mean, this is on him now to try to repair. He's got to, and it's not going to be easy. Ask Barack Obama what it's like pushing an agenda forward when you have a Senate controlled by the other party. We'll see what happens in the runoff races in Georgia. Things could tilt Democrats' way, but as it stands, he's going to be facing Mitch McConnell and a Republican Senate. Mitch McConnell, who famously said, I forget which term it was with Obama, but that he saw his job as basically to I guess it was the first term, because I think he said it was his job to make him a one-term president. That's the kind of circumstance that Joe Biden will be facing now. You know, and I'll say one other thing, that to this notion that he doesn't want, you know, people to think of opponents as the enemy. But there are, as Susan was referencing, and we've talked about this all night, the many tens of millions of Americans who voted the other way. Well, Republican voters are concerned about him. They see Joe Biden as the swamp, a guy who's a lifelong politician who isn't in touch with them, despite his, you know, Scranton roots, etc. They're very worried, for example, when it comes to the Supreme Court, that he'll stack the Supreme Court. And Republicans don't want that. So he's got a complicated time ahead of him. But he's beginning with the right language. He's beginning with, let's talk about a country where decency matters, where character matters, where doing the right thing matters. And that's what we heard from him tonight.
Paul, I want to go to Katie Simpson in just a sec, but I do want to ask you one more question, and it's this. What you know of Joe Biden's political history, particularly when he was a senator, I've heard people say, but particularly Democrats say, that he has this conciliatory nature, that he knows how to negotiate across the aisle. Is that your sense?
Yeah, that's his brand. I mean, that's one of the reasons that Obama made him the vice president. I mean, Obama did not have a long history on Capitol Hill, and he needed and wanted what Biden brought to the game, somebody who does work across the aisle. I mean, having said what I said about facing a potentially problematic Senate controlled by Republicans, Joe Biden has a lot of friends over there, people that he's worked with for many, many, many years. That's part of the swamp aspect in one way, but on the other hand, it's like he knows how to do that, and people will work with him. Look at John McCain, right? I mean, that wasn't fluke. Joe Biden is a very likable guy, is his brand, and it's complicated when you're president, of course, but he'll be using that to try to build bridges that have been not just torn down, but blown to bits in recent years. So, I mean, it's a good point to raise, Ian. That's a very positive check mark, a big check mark on the positive side for Biden.
All right, Paul. Well, listen, anybody who's listening now can ask you anything. Here's a shameless plug for Cross Country Checkup tomorrow.
you.
Yeah, well, you know, we're all one big family. So, and Susan Ormiston also will be a guest tomorrow on CBC Radio, and our viewers can ask them anything. Paul, thank you.
Poor Paul. Poor Paul. If I may, I just want, while we're looking at the picture of this parking lot, I'd like to, for some context, pull up a photograph that is a compilation of all the vice presidents that have come before this moment. Just have a look at that. Just see if we can zoom in a little. Perhaps not. Just take a look at that.
Stand closer to your TV.
That's right. I know I am. All the men, the white men who came before this moment, flanked by the 47th Vice President-elect, Kamala Harris. That is a picture that needs no further context, but it's there, how it started and how it's going.